Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and guys, we are going to take a look today at a couple of big signings, some big defenseman signings. We're going to be taking a look at the Charlie McAvoy and the Ryan Pulock signings and what it means for the defensive market in terms of signings moving forward. We're going to be going over that today. So, we're going to start off with the big one up in Boston as Charlie McAvoy, the 2016 14th overall draft pick, the right shot defenseman. He's coming off a contract, a 3-year deal, a $14.7 million contract that would pay him $4.9 million per season. It was a really good deal for the Boston Bruins. It was a bridge deal that would inevitably lead up to the current contract that will come into effect next season. Again, it starts next year. It is an 8-year, $76 million contract. Oh, that looked familiar? That's right. That's the same contract that Chicago Blackhawks defenseman Seth Jones signed, the exact same contract this summer. So, what does this mean for the Boston Bruins moving forward? Well, it seems like the Boston discount is officially gone. We saw some guys take lesser money to stay in Boston. Zdeno Chara, Tuukka Rask, Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, all those guys had taken discounts at some point in their career to play for the winning culture and organization of the Boston Bruins. That kind of goes out the window now, and you're starting to see the shift. Well, it's pretty apparent with this deal. It pretty much exemplifies every piece of this being the direction of the Bruins blue line moving forward. They went from Ray Bourque, who was the top defenseman on this team, to the Zdeno Chara era in Boston, and now moving along to the Long Beach Bruins defenseman Charlie McAvoy as the next great defenseman in Boston. This is a guy that's going to always be a Norris Trophy finalist year after year. He's only 23 years old. A right shot defenseman, again, we know how valuable those guys are, and that probably comes into effect for his contract and Ryan Pulock, which we'll talk about in a minute. But overall, this is a contract you really can't hate too much if you're a Bruins fan. It's good for the organization, it's good for the fans, and it's good for the player. I mean, he's getting a very lucrative contract, $76 million. Now, again, this is in a flat salary cap, so you can only, assume what the Bruins are going to have to do cap-wise moving forward to get their team under the cap with this extra $9.5 million per year. This is a guy that's a 40 to 50 point defenseman in a full 82 game schedule. And I think the most interesting thing about Charlie McAvoy is where he was drafted. I mean, we remember that 2016 draft. We just talked about it like a week ago, not even, when Olli Juolevi was the 5th overall pick to the Vancouver Canucks. He was the first defenseman picked in that draft. And you look at some of the guys that were picked later in that first round. Mikhail Sergachev, who just won his, he's got 2 Stanley Cups in Tampa Bay. Jacob Chikrin in Arizona looks like an absolute beast. Charlie McAvoy, another perfect example. Jake Bean, who's now in Columbus. So you're seeing how that draft is kind of unfolding. That 2016 draft, very interesting how that has all kind of come to fruition since then. But I think it's interesting he was picked 14th overall. He would definitely be a top 5 draft pick if they were to redo that draft today. So, very interesting stuff. All right, so I also want to mention the first couple of years of this contract, from years 3 to 6, is a full no movement clause. He cannot get traded. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it unless there's a mutual agreement for a buyout. Other than that, this deal is completely set in stone, and you can't do anything about it yet. But things change as this deal goes along. If there needs to be a buyout or a possible trade to move that salary. Starting in the end of year 6 into year 7, the Boston Bruins can give him a modified no-trade clause, which is a 10-team trade list. So he puts a list of 10 teams he is willing to go to, so he still has a decent amount of leverage. And let's be honest, if he could find the Cup contenders, you could probably knock 3 teams off. If he really wants to stay in Boston, take the 3 best teams, put the 3 worst teams. There's 6 teams right there that probably aren't going to get you, and then maybe 4 teams that you think aren't really that interested in you. And there you go. And you could still have a decent amount of leverage in trade negotiations in that regard. But then in the final 2 years of this deal, he would have a 10-team no trade list. So basically, he would write a list of 10 teams he wouldn't go to, which still means the Bruins have full control over 22 teams that McAvoy would have no say in a deal transpiring. Now, depending on what happens in 7 or 8 years from now, maybe he would be willing to move his no-move clause in order to move out. That could also be on the table at some point, but that is the contract details. As of now, it's a little bit confusing because it kind of changes throughout the deal, but I think that's a little bit more protection on the Bruins side of things, especially in this salary cap game. All right, so now we're moving on to the other contract, and that is New York Islanders defenseman Ryan Pulock, 27-year-old defenseman in the prime of his NHL career, a 2013 first-round pick. God damn, my handwriting is neat with the Ryan Pulock thing, but that's all aside. He was a 15th overall draft pick in that year. Again, so 14th and 15th overall. These guys actually turn out to be pretty good players. They don't all have to go first or second overall, guys. That's drafting and development 101, and we're seeing it right here with these 2 guys in particular. Another right shot defenseman. You always put a money sign after the right shot defenseman because of how valuable they are. And Ryan Pulock is finishing up a 2-year bridge deal he had with the Islanders. A 2-year, $10 million contract. To do the math, it was a $5 million AAV for Pulock. He's going to see a nice little boost in his contract over the next couple years because he just signed an 8-year, $49.2 million contract. It's going to pay him $6.15 million per season. That's the AAV, the annual average value. A really good contract for Ryan Pulock. His deal is a little bit less complicated. It's a 16-team no trade list for the entirety of his 8 years with this contract. So a 16-team no trade list. So he has half the league that he could say, I don't want to go to that team. This is a defenseman. He's a little bit different than Charlie McAvoy. He's not going to be a Norris Trophy finalist every year. I think he's a very underrated defenseman. Again, maybe biased because I'm an Islander fan, but I think he's a guy that maybe people are starting to talk about a little bit more, especially with how the Islanders have had success in the playoffs. I think guys like Pulock and Pelech have definitely gained some attention in that regard. But this is an Islanders blue line. You look at Pulock and Pelech together, their contract is just slightly more than the one contract in Charlie McAvoy. So the Islanders defense, Pulock and Pelech, I think a lot of people would argue, including myself, is the best defensive pairing in the entire NHL, coming in, I think, at 13.5 million, something like that. Compared to McAvoy, I think it's 11.5 for the both of them combined. 11.5 million for these 2 defensemen. McAvoy is making 9.5 million on his own. And I think that does just show what Lou Lamoriello can do with his contracts with the New York Islanders, with not giving the player much leverage. He pretty much gives you your offer, and that's about it. He doesn't really move much on the dial there. So with that out of the way, we got the McAvoy and the Pulock deal done. Now what does this say about the future? Because now the big name everybody's going to be talking about now is next summer, Ryan, I keep saying, how many times am I going to call him Ryan Graves? Adam Fox is up for a new contract for the Rangers because a lot of people pretty much say they're the same player. Adam Fox is up for a new contract for the Rangers, and I think the Norris Trophy could be the worst thing that could happen here for the Rangers in negotiations because no defenseman win the Norris Trophy and miss the Stanley Cup playoffs. That does not happen. But that just shows you how high of a level we are seeing from Adam Fox, especially last season. And it's not going to bode well in contract negotiations for the Rangers because he is going to ask for a lot of money. And listen, he wants to be a Ranger. He got traded to Buffalo. What was it? VC that got traded to Buffalo, I think. He was with where was he with? Carolina and Calgary, and Adam Fox said, "Nah, I don't want to play there. I want to play with the Rangers. I've said that all along. I want to be a New York Rangers." So maybe he takes a little bit of a hometown discount. But with that said, Adam Fox, we're seeing these young guys say, "Listen, out of my entry level deal, I want to get paid big money." We've seen that from a lot of guys, and I think Adam Fox is one of those guys that he's not necessarily using it as his leverage, but he knows his value on the market. And I think, winning the Norris Trophy in a year where you have Victor Hedman in the prime of his NHL career, winning two back-to-back cups. He's one of the finalists. Who was the other one? I think it was Giordano or somebody like that. Cale Makar. Again, we know how good Cale Makar is as well. He just signed a massive extension. So this is the kind of stuff here where we're going to see the market shift as soon as next year. And then we're going to look at the forward market, and you're going to see a little shift here with Nathan MacKinnon, who is going to be looking for another contract this coming summer. So those seem to be really the two big names left, because a lot of these guys have already locked up. Ryan Pulock off the board, Charlie McAvoy off the board, Brady Tkachuk has already signed with Ottawa. That was for this year, but still got it done. Matthias Ekholm off the board. Mika Zibanejad off the board for next summer. So it's going to look like it's not even December, and it looks like it's going to be of extremely boring July 1st next year for free agency, because I don't even know who's going to be available. I mean, unless Nathan MacKinnon's there, it might be a pretty boring situation next year. But with that said, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you think of these signings for both the New York Islanders and the Boston Bruins? What do you think of the McAvoy and the Pulock deals? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.